Hello, Hopkinton, and welcome to the TGIF version of Hopkinton Hangout Hour. I'm Mike Terosian, your host. It is Friday, September 18th, and working for the weekend. Here we are again with Tom Nappy helping me out, and with us today, love having back Boy in Blue, Chief Bennett. How we doing?
We're doing great, Mike. How you doing?
Doing great. You know, what a wonderful week. A lot of stuff happening in town. Um, Town meeting. How was that for a town meeting, huh?
It went really well. So much work went into putting that together and making it flow and keeping it safe. But sitting, watching it, I was impressed with everything that went into it and how smoothly it went. You know, Executing a town meeting during COVID-19 has certainly presented its challenge, and everybody rose to the occasion.
Oh, absolutely. And I think all the planning that went into it as well. I think it ran just smoother than any town meeting that's normally held at the middle school. I thought, of course, everyone had plenty of elbow room, but we also had no congestion at the lines for check in. Everyone in and out, nice and easy. Everyone followed the little pathways you had set up. And I mean, what you have, you probably had at least 15 hours of meetings um, planning before you even showed up there on Saturday.
Absolutely, absolutely. There was a pretty big team with Lieutenant Porter and Deputy Miller and Sean and Casey from Board of Health and Nursing. Everybody was all hands on deck to offer whatever they could to do it, and they certainly delivered. I don't know what the normal count for town meeting, but we squeezed in well over 200, uh, and uh, and like you said, it flowed really well, and people seem to enjoy it. Getting back together, many people commented, "This is the first time I've really been in a crowd." So it was good. There was a lot of
Well,
excitement.
what were your thoughts about it? Just thinking about the whole COVID thing, getting it done on a Saturday and in one session.
That was nice, especially for my first town meeting as chief. It was nice to have it be uh, condensed like that. I think in the spring it'll take a little longer to get through all the capital articles and all the items that pop up, but no, it was exactly what the community needed to keep us operational, to fund our budgets, to get us past that all those hurdles, and I'm grateful to everybody for cooperating and keeping us all partnering to keep us all safe.
No, that's great. And so, speaking about keeping safe, you got the kiddies now on the road and in those big buses, those big, almost empty buses. A lot of extra car traffic out there.
Oh, the traffic on Wednesday rather, was rough.
Yeah.
We had Pleasant Street, Hayden Road, Grove Street, all full parking lots. But again, as an example of how we work together as a town, so we brought in all hands on deck to help with the schools and traffic. The patrols were out in the streets. The school resource officers and Detective Sergeant Van Alton, Lieutenant Porter, and I were on the campuses looking at traffic flow and traffic patterns and trying to help move things along. We repeated on Thursday with the new group of people coming because the days are alternating.
Yep.
So today we're happy to report that through some subtle changes that we made and um, some changes at the middle school, especially, we're able to alleviate traffic tremendously. And now we're confident next week will flow more like a normal, or even better than normal traffic.
Sure.
Uh,
Well, well, let's forget about COVID. We all know, and because you've only been here a few years, you know that the first day of school is always a nightmare, no matter how
all,
many kids. I mean, the
all,
first week, everyone's trying to figure it out, and it's not so much the traffic patterns as well. It's just everyone wants to be early. It's the first day. Everyone's out there, and no one's not quite sure what they're going to do or what to expect. And you guys, you pulled it off. I mean, I'm glad I was out of town when that happened.
well, if you were in town, you would have been in town for a while.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's it.
so,
That's what's nice about working at Ashland sometimes. So,
yep.
but anyway, so we get that all done. Kids are in there. Everything's going smooth. But the main reason we got you here, we can reminisce all we want, but main reason we got you here is I want to talk about your jail diversion program.
I'm so happy to talk about it. Um, One of the things is that radio interfering.
That was my radio. I'm sorry.
All right. So, this is something I'm really excited to talk about. It's been here for about 5 years. It's a big part of the national conversation on policing and police reform. And I'm so excited to come in and reassure the community that we're on top of this and we've been doing it for a long time. I must concede that it appears we weren't good enough at promoting it, and all the good work that we do for wellness between Board of Health and Youth and Family Services, and the seniors, where there are a lot of programs in the community that we want to really educate the public on. To that effect, John Alcott had come long before COVID, and said we need to develop a program to educate the public more on the services that are available. Our biggest fear is that someone might be suffering in silence, because they're afraid they don't know who to call and they're reluctant to call the police. But rest assured, we're your one-stop shopping. If you don't know the answer to a question, call us. Our dispatch communication center, Mike,
Yeah.
get trained to triage a call and get the appropriate response, whether it's Youth and Family Services, the building department, or whatever resources in the community. You guys know how to connect people.
Right.
You really do.
Right. And that's your first start. It's just like any kind of service. That first contact on the phone, that's what's going to make or break a call. Any kind of thing. But the big thing, so on the Jail Diversion Program, you said it's been here for 5 years. I thought this was something new. Now, I know a little bit what goes on in town, but like you said, I'm more on the red side than the blue side. So, of course, I don't know about all your programs, but
Right.
Tell me exactly what this does and how it works. And we'll let Ashley explain it. So, whatever you want to do.
All right, I'll just kick off and get my talk, my personal joy in the program. I really want to communicate that because I'm really passionate about this program. It really does deliver the next level of care to the community, and especially those in crisis and those in need. So Ashley is embedded in our community through a program that we call ASH. It's a partnership with Ashland, Sherman, and Holliston, and it's sponsored by the Bureau of Justice Assistance grants through the Department of Mental Health, where we partner with advocates. But that's the high level stuff, and Ashley will get into what she does. But really, what it does here is it puts Ashley in our cruisers going to calls. She is one of your first responders. If people call in crisis or with a psychological or maybe a substance abuse problem or something where you might need someone that has a little more training and need to speak more about from a care level. Ashley, she's in the training room right now. She's in my conference room, but she's in the training room. She runs downstairs, jumps in the car, and goes to the call. She is a first responder, and for me, the program, I've watched this change our culture, our mindset about handling these substance abuse and mental health calls. I like to say it created a cultural paradigm shift, and it's amazing the way the officers, once they became comfortable and through exposure to the clinician, and Ashley can talk about how she trains them on an ongoing basis, how she trains us on an ongoing basis. It really has changed everything. Before, we used to respond to someone who was in crisis, and the tools we had was to inadequately Section 12 them or send them to the hospital, which didn't offer enough information to really give the person assessing at the hospital the right information they needed, or we would arrest them for disorderly or disturbing the peace, which served only to stop the crisis in the moment, but really didn't serve the people, didn't serve the families, didn't serve the person in crisis in any real way of value. An hour later, the family would be down picking the person up, and they're no better off for it. But now this person has a criminal record and they have to go to court. And then we can talk later on about, after Ashley goes over all that she does, I mean, the impact on all of the services that she helps and saves the use of resources is astounding. So with that.
So Ashley, you do a lot. This is great, and it's nice to put a face to the term clinician. As Chief mentioned, I'm a dispatcher myself, and I hear, call wait for the clinician for these calls or whatever. So it's nice to put a face to the actual title.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me here today.
So you're in there, you're at the police station. So what is your day like when you go to work? What is it that is what is it that you're gonna have to do?
Yeah, sure. Okay, sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. So yeah, I come in and I usually start my day by, like you said, going to dispatch, letting them know that I am here, participating in roll call, um, and in roll calls, I think something that's awesome about our program too is that we provide both formal and informal training to the police. So by me going to roll call, I might be able to do more formal trainings with the officers, more like in-service trainings. And then informally, me being along with the officers responding to calls, they learn through our observations and my way of working with individuals. So I think that's a huge and really awesome benefit within working with our program too.
Then, as we know, with the officers, it's just more than law enforcement. Before you were available and the service was available, they were the social worker, the best that they could, and but it must help the person in need when they see someone like you instead of an officer, uniform and a guns, with them. It must. I don't know if it brings a more calmness or what, but your role there again, you're going first up with the cruiser with the officer, and you show up to the call, and they make sure you stay safe, and you're just able to do your job, which normally is the kind of care that the person is supposed to get after. If you weren't around, the person would try to get that care after we'll say the Section 12 or the PC or whatever they do. So, but you're there hitting them first.
Correct, right. And what we know is that after a year of having a clinician embedded within the program, within the police department, the officer attitudes have changed, towards individuals with mental illness. There was a shift, a positive shift, where officers felt more confident in working with individuals and like handling calls involving mental health, but also they self-reported being less authoritative or authoritative like in their attitude and kind of their demeanor. So there's great value, I believe, indirectly and directly working with the police departments. By us responding, as you were saying, we provide on-scene de-escalation, full psychiatric assessments on scene, provide resources and referrals of care. But there's, a variety of different calls that we might be utilized within, not so much even just mental health, but suicidal, homicidal ideation, psychosis. You mentioned a little bit upon it, Mike, but like in-cell assessments, substance use, overdose, domestic violence. We could even be called to a call involving a car accident and provide support to, bystanders or whomever was involved within that car accident. But then also working with like children and elders, and sometimes with really difficult and what we all collectively have to work, maybe respond to is death notifications. So providing support to family in those situations as well.
So this is fantastic, and this is a great resource for the community and the communities that are part of this program. Would you also be there for the officers? Let's say it was that really bad call, that the officer had. Would you work to help them, or is that safe for the CIST?
Right. So you're talking about like debriefing and such
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. I mean, there's great value to debriefing. We're all humans, right? And we all have emotions and dealing with things. So debriefing is very beneficial.
Oh, that's great. And
Mike, if I could add to that.
Yeah, please.
So how reserved public safety people are about getting into their emotions. Part of the way we do what we do and see what we see is because we compartmentalize it
Right.
and we deny it and we stuff it in the back of our head until it comes out in troubles down the road. But what I like, and as a chief and as someone that it's my job to care for everybody here.
Right.
They know Ashley. They, I think, in a moment, I think that any one of the officers or any one of the people in the building would be comfortable just walking over to her and having a conversation that they wouldn't if pushed into a situation with a stranger. I think that, those debriefings work great, but it takes time to get that comfort level. It takes time to get there.
Right.
And I just seeing her walking around and interacting with the officers, it's obvious that they trust her. They have full faith and trust with her, and that goes a long way. And actually, I like going out there in the afternoon after my hard days, and she resets me so that I can go be normal.
And, Chief, you put on the best term, reset,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
being in this job, a reset is needed.
Yep.
And it's not. I mean, you don't have to do it every day, but it's nice when it's needed to have that little reset. And one thing that I love about this program here, it's just one person. It's not like you have a regional team that of clinicians that, all right, I need a clinician, boom, and then they're here for you. And one day you got Joe, next day you got Bill, next day you got Amy, next day you got whatever. You have that continuity of one person. So there's your trust and rapport. It's just, lack of a better term, another partner on the team.
Absolutely. But what you don't see, just as you look at the image of me, I have a tremendous amount of resources and staff behind me. Ashley brings that to the table as well. The company that she works for, the service that we've contracted is expansive. Ashley, maybe you can speak to what you bring, what you can refer to in your organization and all that they actually stand behind you with.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like I had briefly mentioned before about something that we are able to provide is the referrals for a level of care. Um, you know, I guess what I would say is that we're obviously an additional tool in an officer's belt, and that we're responding to calls involving individuals in crisis. And in that like stance, I guess we're then saying, okay, what do they need? We're looking at people in a person-centered, focus, and saying, we're trying to divert people when they don't necessarily need to go to the hospital. So if they're not going to be going to the hospital, is there other services that they could benefit from and offering those services to them?
Yep.
Right.
Ashley, I was just curious if you could talk a little bit more about how you ended up in this role and a little bit about your background.
Absolutely. So my background is I have a master's degree in social work. A lot of my background is working with youth. And honestly, I'm very passionate about my work. I'm very passionate about working with individuals, and honestly, the fast paced, go with the flow, and it's kind of like, how could I best help this person? What can we do? How can we look at this? And I really enjoy working with not only my team within Advocates, but then also each one of my departments and all the officers that I, work with on a daily basis. So it's really gratifying work. And, like I said, I'm so passionate about it.
So now, where you from? Where do you go to school? Give us an idea. Who are you?
All right, who am I? All right, so for undergrad, I went to Anna Maria College in Paxton, where I received my undergrad degree in social work. And then I went on to grad school, which was at Wheelock, and that's where I got my MSW. And I've been in the role for over a year now, just over a year. And yeah, I'm loving every day of it, really.
In what other departments? I know Chief mentioned again. What other departments are you working with?
Sure. So we were actually the first regional program. which was in 2015. And so our ASH program stands for Ashland, Sherborne, Holliston, and Hopkinton.
Oh, so it wasn't named after you then? Okay, just
No, but it kind of works out.
okay. That's a
I
great
want to
name.
ask you, can I ask a question, Mike, of Ashley?
You know, yeah, take over. You can be host. Why not?
So, people have watched cops and they get a camera and they're riding in a car and, but a lot of people never get that opportunity to really experience what it's like to go to a call or what it feels like, when you were new here.
Mhm.
So you get a call, you put on your bulletproof vest, you run downstairs, and do you remember anything about how you felt getting in a police car, the sights, sounds, and feeling of that?
I guess I could say I honestly was really impressed of just what a great kind of connection it is matching a social worker along with a police officer, and how well and that we can come together by whether it's providing information with each other, if we have a knowledge base with working with this individual before, maybe kind of seeing what they have in house and such, but just how naturally and how naturally the two roles can come together and put the person for centered to help them best.
Was it cool?
It was cool. It's still cool.
Oh,
I tell you, there's nothing like riding around in a cruiser. I did it for a day with Officer Buckley, and we were doing a little program for the chief, Chief Lee at the time.
Yep.
And we got to see just a day in the patrolman's life, and how he checks out his cruiser to how he pulls over cars and how he comes back home safe.
Yep.
That was a lot of fun, and it's cool. But let me tell you something, Ashley. Until you rode in a fire truck, that's where it's at.
Yeah.
We'll get you in the fire trucks. But
I'll tell you, I've been trying to recruit Ashley. She'd be a great cop.
oh, absolutely, and you got a bunch of great cops. It's just
Yeah.
another addition to the team. So Joe, that I wanted to ask you was, with everything going on in the world today, and the biggest what's that biggest tagline? Defund the police and all that stuff. Where they say let's transfer funds from policing to social work. This is something you're already doing,
Right.
right? It's
You know,
and you're not the first to do this.
no, this program was invented by, help me, Ashley.
What was that?
Who thought, whose brainchild is this?
Dr. Sarah Abbott.
Dr. Sarah Abbott
Yeah.
and Chief Craig Davis. And I know Sarah, I just blanked on her name for a moment.
Yeah.
And it's been going, it's actually becoming what will become probably the national model. They have, and speaking with people from advocates, plenty of people are reaching out and wanting to expand this program into other states. And Ashley has some data on how many communities they're actually working with to expand it. I think it's in 15 communities right now, 8 different programs.
Yeah, so the Advocates Co-Response Jail Diversion Program was actually the first co-response program in the country. And at the time, Dr. Sarah Abbott was the co-responding clinician in Framingham Police Department. So we're currently, we currently have 8 programs in 15 communities, which are highlighted right here.
Cool.
That's
Yeah, thank
awesome.
you, Tom.
And this is the Advocates website, advocates.org. You can find out more about the Jail Diversion Program.
Sure. Yep. You can go to jaildiversion.org is our direct website, and as well going through Advocates.
Good job, Tom.
There you go, Tom.
So, and the reality of it is, we did this, we're ahead of this because of creative use of a Bureau of Justice Administration grant, the Burn Grant, which is used for all sorts of things,
Yes.
including testings and things, and in conjunction with the Department of Mental Health in the state. So this program costs us almost nothing. I don't want to put a number out there, but
Right.
it's pennies for what we get back, and that's because of the federal funding and the grant. So I'm hoping that if anybody's listening, if you want to put money somewhere, let's get some money into these programs and copy this model. Don't tear this apart. Don't look to defund this program because this model works, and we have data, and we can show you. People are interested in how to do this. Come on by. We'll show you. You don't have to make anything up or try experiments. It's tested. It's proven.
Yeah, just hearing on my end too, Joe. When the calls are coming in, and then you hear the clinicians in, just by me being there in the control room, you hear the difference, that the outcome of the call. Normally it's, all right, I'm coming back with one. Here's my starting mileage, or section 12 to Natick or something. It's I've seen the difference.
Yep.
Since they brought the
What's better than that? We go to a family in crisis that they don't know who to call. They call the police. The police bring a resource, and that family member or that loved one stays in the community, but their care has begun. They've been given immediate on-site care. They might have had an evaluation. They have referrals. They've been given the resources and what they need to move forward. Some of these people are just in a moment in a long-term problem. And sometimes it's a matter of just jump-starting that care. And this is a layman's explanation of it. But for many people, it's their first time, and they don't know how to navigate this system, and they don't know how to get resources, and they don't know the contacts. And in a matter of an hour, all that's jump-started. And, keeping someone in the community is the ultimate success. Dragging someone away and putting them in the cell block is an ultimate failure.
Right. So now, of course, Ashley, you're not there 24 hours a day. So you have like some office hours at each town, and then you're just, on call. Is that how that system works?
So, right. So I'm shared between 4 different towns, but through mutual aid, if I'm in Hopkinton today and there's a call that's in Holliston, through mutual aid, they'll get me, we'll meet on the line, or that town will come directly get me some way, somehow. A cruiser is bringing me to the scene, or to wherever the call is. So yeah, typically my hours are 1 to 9 p.m. But in those times when I am not working, PES or psychiatric emergency services through advocates could be utilized, where you would be reaching a clinician 24 hours a day.
Yeah. So still call us. Through this relationship with Ashley and advocates, this level of care is here. You just might not have someone on scene in your home, but we will get there and deliver this level of care. And then when we're done with jail diversion, I'd like to just speak a moment about the other resources in town.
I'm going to give you a minute to do that.
All right.
A minute and a half.
One thing I want to ask Ashley, and I'm not going to, and I'm still tempted to, is, that whole defund the police thing. Do you feel, I'll put it in a safe way for you. Do you feel safe going to these calls with a police officer?
Yeah, the scene is considered safe before I'm entering.
There you go.
As a professional, if you step away from your position as an advocate, you personally, would you respond to these calls by yourself?
No, I would not.
Yeah, they're not. They're usually, when these calls start, it's usually the people's worst time. And, again, they don't know what to do or who to call. And the situation isn't pleasant.
No. Get in, stabilize it, and then turn it around. And thank you, Ashley, for joining me today here. I really can't thank you enough for everything you do and all the care that you give to our communities. And, the things that I keep repeating is you are a first responder, and the community really does benefit, and we're all grateful to have you.
I'm so pleased to be here, honestly. I look forward to work every single day.
Excellent. And Ashley, yes, thank you from all of us from the community and from the Red side too. We love having you there. And Joe, here we go. We're ready. We're off and started. We get the school year going. I mean, what next could go wrong? Oh, we got trick or treat to deal with, but we'll talk to you next time on that.
I'll be back to talk about that and a lot more. We got a lot more to talk about. Look forward to coming back.
So now we go, guys. Again, Ashley and Chief, thanks again. And now we're going to go to a pre-recorded segment that we recorded earlier, another episode where Bob Hamilton sits down with Chuck Joseph, our local historian.
Hi, Chuck. Welcome in from
Hey, Bob.
the
How are you?
waiting room. And
Thank you.
you're welcome. And you can see that Tom Nappy's here with me. And we'd like to get started. If you can tell us, a lot of our viewers haven't seen you on our HCAM show before. I know you've been involved with basketball coaching a long time ago at the high school. Back in, I think it was 85. My daughters might have even had you for a teacher at that time. But we'd like to talk something about the history of Hopkinton and your history of Hopkinton.
Sure. Well, Bob, there's a million different directions to go in. You know, there's kind of the really early history as to how Hopkinton got started, and then there's the more stuff that we have around the 1880s forward, where we have photography that really kind of captures some of the industrial era as it began in the latter part of the 1800s into the early 1900s, and then it went dormant again. You know, for the early part of the 1900s, and then of course was resurrected in the 1970s till now, where we've seen our biggest period of growth.
Well, that's a long history period. I know I came to Hopkinton back in, I think it was 73 or 74, and raised two daughters here, and I've been here ever since. I didn't know you wanted to go back to the 1800s. That's a lot of history.
Well, there's a million different ways to do it, you know. One of the things we could do is we could just take a look at some photography, and that sometimes stimulates people, you know, in terms of what they want to look at and all that.
Yeah.
So if it's all right with you to share a screen, Bob, would that be all right?
Yes, if you can get it to share, should be able to.
Let me see what I can do here.
Yeah.
So you guys, can you see where I'm at right now?
Yeah, well, I see.
All right. So this is
of pictures.
Yeah. Let me kind of walk people through. I'll pick out a few pictures that we can kind of play with. Okay. So this is a great shot. This is one of my favorite pictures of Hopkinton. This is around the 1890s, somewhere in there. This is a shot of what today would be Middlesex Bank and
it'll be up there pretty quick.
Bill's Pizza. So the central building, I don't know if you guys, can you see my cursor if it's on the screen here?
Yes.
Okay. So this building right here, the Park House, was the second hotel that was there. There was a Highland House before that. And it had beautiful, beautiful wooden structures. I mean, absolutely gorgeous. There's a bank over here on the side. And if you you kind of spend a little bit of time with this, you'll see that there's an arched way back here for horses to come in there. It's called the Hotel Livery Stable. So you bring your horses out back and board your horses overnight and then stay at the hotel. And this was a swing period, if you will, because we had hitching posts here along the street, but we had our first electricity lines coming through up at the top here. So this is right around the 1900s. We have a bicycle here as well. And so you get to kind of see Hopkinton.
Yep.
So this is a picture of what would be today the town hall. So this was the second town hall that was there because we lost a lot of buildings by fire. Let me go back a little bit here if I can. This is a kind of the same period, if you will. Are you guys seeing the photograph that's up here now?
Yep.
Yeah, so this was that bank that was there.
Right.
This was the Park House that was here. This would be today what is Bill's Pizza. We're right next door. And you can see that there's a trolley car here.
Oh, yeah.
So Hopkinton had trolleys that came through. There's also a horse and buggy.
Now, was that building in front of the trolley, was that the town hall at the time?
So this is post 1903 because this building was constructed in 1903, the current brick town hall. That's the third town hall on that site. There was two wooden town halls on that site before, both of which burned down. And I believe the last one was in 1890. And then it took them about 13 years, and there was a huge debate in town hall about should they build another wooden one or should they build it out of brick? And it's kind of the Three Little Pigs story. You know, they said, well, we lost this one by fire twice, so we're going to build the next one by brick. And lo and behold, they did, you know.
But they
And
didn't
then
have any
this is-
problem with flooding in that day.
No, they did not. Actually, they did in the basement. So that's been around for a while. But it wasn't a fire system that caused it.
Yeah.
And then this is a big granite water trough for horses right here,
Yeah.
which still, I believe it's out behind the fire station now. That same one that was moved. So there's a lot of really cool stuff in here. This is kind of the 1930s, same
Yeah.
location. All right, you can see that there's much more electrical wire in there. This was a furniture store in here that eventually burned down. This is, you know, right where the Thai restaurant is now.
Yep.
That same wall is still there.
That's the wall that my wife always told the kids, don't go sitting on that wall.
Right. That's exactly right. And this is the 1930s also in the center of town. This goes up to the 1950s now, 1960s, where
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you're Brown
Yep.
and Smith's used to be the old breakfast place that was there.
Yeah, I remember that.
And of course, that's what's there today. And so this was on the corner of, this is where the gas station is now, you know, right on the corner
Yeah.
of 85 and 135.
Right.
And it was the Hopkinton Cleaners back then, and that came down. But we have a million different things we can do here, you know, in terms of what you want to go see.
Yeah, there's the state. Oh, what is
So-
that? Thompson's Boot Manufacturer.
Yeah, so Thompson's boot manufacturer, and if you look, I can't blow it up with the current software that I have it on right now, but this little sign right here says Grove Street. So this was the boot factory that is where CVS is today.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is Grove Street going up and Main Street running in front.
Now, when did that come down? Do you know?
Yeah, so that came down, it would have been early 1900s.
Oh,
Because this was a big boot factory in the 1800s, and if you blow this up, you can actually see people in the window. Some of the people who are working in the factory. It's really a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And this was their post factory. This was the town barn for a lot of years.
is this
the same
down by Ash
location.
Street?
This is right here.
Oh, that's
Right here.
close. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the same location. That's where this was.
Oh,
So if you go back a little bit, this is looking down from town hall towards 85.
Yep.
All right. So that's the view.
uh-huh.
All right, and that's what it looked like back then. And then if you go a little further, you're looking now up towards Town Hall from 85. So that's what you see today. And that's what was there back in the 1880s. So there's a lot of photographs like that. I mean, there's so much history here that there's a million different things we could look at, you know, all over town, different areas you want to look
Now,
at.
did you collect these photographs yourself? Where did you get them? Did you get them from the
Yeah,
library?
yeah. So a lot of them came from the library's collection that the Hopkinton Library has. And then there were 2 books that were published. They were bound. Let me see if I can do this here. They were bound in this pamphlet, this beautiful
Oh,
leather-bound pamphlet. And the library has one of them that's a little bit disheveled, but it still has some great photography in there. And then, as has happened over the years, as I've done these various history lectures, so a citizen in town brought me one that was in phenomenal condition that they had found in their attic. So we were a pretty substantial town for a lot of years.
Chuck, do you have a favorite time period that you like studying the most in Hopkinton history?
Yeah, well, there's 2 really. I'll tell you, Tom. The first one is, you know, I don't know if people are aware that we have all of our original town meeting notes back to the 1700s.
Wow.
And there's a whole story as to how they survived the 3 fires in Town Hall, because Town Hall burned down, 2 fires, burned down twice. And these town meeting notes have survived intact. And I have gone back as a former American history teacher. I went back and read all of 1775 and 1776 and read all the handwritten notes during the American Revolution. And that was really a favorite period. It's a remarkable exercise.
What kind of condition are those notes currently in?
They're in great shape. They're in great shape. They're now kept in a climate-controlled room, and you have to get access to it, and you have to handle it with care and gloves and all that kind of stuff. But when you read it, the real challenge is that the folks who were recording the town meeting notes were not terribly fluent. And so there's a lot of misspellings, and every time the recorder changed, you'd have to get used to their writing and what they couldn't spell and what they could spell. And, it's in 1775, it's really remarkable to read through, because they used to call town meeting in the name of His Majesty. This town meeting would be called in the name of His Majesty. And then you read through, and you can read the turmoil that's occurring as the revolution is starting to approach. And then at one point in July, I think it's in July or maybe October of 1776, where for the first time it says, "This town meeting is now held in the name of these United States." And that sends a chill up your spine when you read that for the first time, because you realize that there's no going back now. They threw the gauntlet down, and they were either going to make it or they weren't going to make it.
Wow.
So that's one of my favorite periods. The other is the whole shoe industry period, when this town was, it was just remarkable that we were producing, I think in about 1885 to 88, we were producing about 11,000 pairs of shoes per day.
Wow.
And that's a pretty significant industry.
That's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. And I'll show people a couple of things they might recognize. So this is a house on the town common. I think you guys may recognize it. Yeah. This was the Claflin house, and of course Lee Claflin was lived across the street, but he was a huge shoe factory owner in town and a major player nationally politically. His son William goes on to become the governor of Massachusetts and the United States senator. And this house actually looked like this at its heyday.
Wow.
So that was quite a structure.
That was a spectacular view from the Commons.
Oh yeah. You could see all the way into what is today Boston. So you can see this little tower here in the middle. Was actually this tower right here. So it went up quite a bit higher than it does today. And there's a couple others in here. These homes are across the street on the common. That's what they look like today. And this is what they looked like back in the turn of the century of 1900s. So there's a lot of stuff like that. There's some great stories about Claflin family and how they were ardent abolitionists, and in the 1860 Republican National Convention, I believe it was in Chicago, they were instrumental in nominating a lanky senator from Illinois named Abraham Lincoln to the presidency. And they came back and founded the New England Theological Seminary up in upstate Vermont, which later moved to metropolitan Boston. And today we know it as Boston University. So there's a fabulous history here that goes back that most people are not aware of, but it's really kind of fun. You think of your town differently, and you look at it differently when you see what's there and what used to be there. Let me see if I can grab a couple of other pictures here for you.
Well, these are great. They really give you a perspective on what it was like in Hopkinton, and it gives you an awareness of what Hopkinton really is. When I first moved out here, we came out because it was a quiet place to live. We moved out from Newton and said, "Oh, this is nice, quaint little town." But there's a lot of history here that built that up.
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting one here. This was the Reservoir Hotel down at Lake Whitehall in the heart of Woodville. And this was there because there were factories throughout the Woodville area. The Wood family, let me see if I can find some of those. Sorry for jumping around here. I wasn't really. So this was the carriage factory that was right down where today the post office is in Woodville. Yep, this was a major carriage factory and horse auctions. Here's a big horse auction going on in their barn. And there's says the carriage refectory there. This is looking back towards Hopkinton from Westboro. This brick building here, the house of George Wood, is still on the corner of Winter Street.
Do you know
That's
how many
the,
shoe factories there were in town at that time?
At one time, there were 11.
11.
Yeah, there were 11 factories. Yeah.
I
And
take it
have
there are
some
no
photos.
remnants of those 11 factories left.
Oh, actually, there is. Yeah. Let me see if I can find that for you. I've got to go see which direction I'm going in here. Yeah. Okay. So we all know where this is today. Yes. Right there on
Yeah.
Main Street, right?
Yeah.
So if you go back, let me find my cursor here. If you go back, this was the shoe factory that was there, the Crooks Brothers Boot Manufactory. So that's right on the corner of the street. And so when you drive by that today, this is what you see.
Right.
But if you were back there in the 1800s, it was a gorgeous building.
Right. They must have employed a lot of people in that area.
Yeah, there were about 400 people in that factory. This was on the corner of Pleasant and Hayden Row.
Marquardine?
House, yep, Stevie's house right there. And that was one of the factory that is where CVS is today. This was one of the factory overs, Erasmus Thompson House. And of course, that was the factory that was there. So this was one of the shoe factories.
Oh.
It has since been completely reworked. I think it was in the 1950s or 60s. They put a brick skin on the building, but it was a wooden building. And let me see if I have that one. I have a shot of it somewhere. I apologize for not being
That's
too
all right.
well organized here. This is a shot from the cemetery looking up to the center of town. So this is over here is St. John's Church. And if you'll notice across the street, there's another church that's wooden. And that was the Methodist Episcopal Church, which pre-existed St. John's. So Church Street was actually named for the Methodist Church and not for St. John's Church. But now that the Methodist Church is gone and St. John's is standing, everybody assumes it was named for St. John's. This is where our current town hall is today, and that was a magnificent shoe factory there.
Yeah.
Wooden structure.
Was there a certain resource in Hopkinton that encouraged all this shoe and boot?
Yeah, it's a great question, Tom. No, actually what happened was, and I'll see if I can pull that out for you. This gentleman right here, this is how shoes used to be made. They were hand stitched. So you would take the upper shoe and you would stitch it to the leather sole in the bottom. And that's why in the center of Hopkinton and a lot of what we call the shoe houses, the little similar vertical 10 by 20s and 20 by 20s, there's a little shed on the back, and that's where this shoe industry began. And then a gentleman in Hopkinton, a young man named Joseph Walker, figured out that he could attach the soles to the uppers using wooden pegs. And he started the whole method of pegging. And then in conjunction with some engineers from Worcester Polytech, they incorporated the steam engine to create machines to peg those shoes. And they could peg a shoe in about 14 seconds. And so that's when all those resources came together to change the whole shoe industry as we know it today.
Wow. And
Yeah.
we do have a YouTube question. Our good friend John Ritz wants to know, what were the nationalities that settled in Hopkinton initially?
Sure. Well, initially, we had, of course, the British were the first to settle here. But early on, there was a Scotch Presbyterian group that was very much part of the early settlers. And there was quite a bit of discord between the different religious sects, the Congregationalists from the British side and the Presbyterians from the Scottish side. And at one point, there was not a significant separation of church and state back then. So the taxes were collected by the minister and were administered in that fashion. So I'm not exactly sure how that all worked out, but that was the system back then. And at one point, the Scotch Presbyterians refused to adhere to some of the Congregationalist rules, and so they were expelled from the town. They were just thrown out. And so the Scottish went to Western Massachusetts and started a town out there called New Glasgow, and that's, I think it's called Blandford today. But there was, and then when to your point, Tom, in the 1850s, when the shoe industry was taking off here, there was a tremendous need for labor, real manual labor in these factories, which coincided with the potato famine in Ireland. So the vast majority of young women who came over into Boston found work out in the shoe mills in the western suburbs, and Hopkinton was one of those places. In fact, there's a great picture here. This is a picture of some of those young girls and young men who worked in the factory. This is the Bridges Shoe Factory, which is located right where Town Hall is today. And you can see the people standing in the doors here. There wasn't a lot of OSHA rules on safety back then. But if you take a look at the faces of some of these, this is one of my favorite pictures of Hopkinton back then, because I think it captures the industry of the time. And back at that time, of course, this is the fire of 1900. There were 3 major fires that actually destroyed the shoe industry in Hopkinton.
What caused this particular fire?
Well, there was a lot of controversy about what caused the fires, whether or not they were deliberately set, or whether or not it was the chemicals that they were using to tan the hides. And it devastated. So what we would know as the Town Hall side of Main Street is the side that burns 3 times. And here you can see that the Congregational Church, this is the second Congregational Church on that site. The first one had burned down in the fire of 1880, and then they built this gorgeous church. This was probably one of the most beautiful wooden structures in all of Hopkinton's history. And then this bell tower was taken down in the 1939 hurricane.
Did a lot of these shoe factories that are built of wood in Hopkinton predate a lot of the factories that we see up in Lowell that are all built out of brick?
Yes, they do, but Lowell, yes and no, because Lowell was primarily, it was a textile industry, and I think it was wealthier, it was a little more centralized, and I think it had a little more money to build their factories from the beginning. But if you look over here, you can see that's that old hotel livery stable sign that I had showed you before. And you can see these buildings, the 1900 fire, that was what was left of that huge factory where Town Hall is. So it was very hard for the town to recover from these. That's the whole side of Main Street's wiped out in 1882. This is looking down Hayden Row Street from up near the high school. You can see there's a lot more trees back then. Of course, this is the whole fire department. This was the Woodville Fire Department, and that's their pumping, and they won the state championship in terms of firefighters who were all volunteers back then. So anyway, we could go on and on. This is
Yeah.
I don't want to bore you guys to death.
You're not boring us.
Oh,
You're
no,
not boring us at all.
Great stuff.
Yeah. This is I always like this one. This is this, if you can see the shoe industry over here, Hopkinton had its own currency. And you got to remember that there was not a centralized currency pre-Civil War. And this currency of Hopkinton Bank, which was worth $2, which was a significant amount of money back then, and the depiction was of the shoe industry in Hopkinton.
Wow. Could that only be used in Hopkinton?
No. That was tied to the reputation of the bank. So in the state of Massachusetts, this was legal currency.
Wow.
Yeah. This goes back to the Healing Springs down at Lake Whitehall. Anyway, we could go on and on. You know, there's all different facets to it, to our history, and I'm not sure if how you want to proceed from here, but I just thought I'd give a little sliver of what's out there.
Well, that's good. We have about 5 minutes left in our show. If you had others you wanted to show, that would be fine. But
Sure. Well, I'll show a couple of iconic ones that people.
oh yeah,
So this is the Stone Tavern, which was known as the Valentine Tavern, the Valentine family, which this is a current photograph of it. There is lore that Washington stayed here on his way to taking over the troops in 1776. However, there's no written documentation that I've seen of that. This is a really early one, about 1880, 1890, of that same building with a picket fence around it and so on. And here's one that's it's hard to say that these are valid, these handwritten dates in the bottom. I don't know who wrote them and when, but it appears as though this would be right because there is a primitive electric pole right here that we can see. And what's interesting to me is there's a windmill in the back that was powering something at that point.
so it's obvious you've spent quite a bit of time looking at these photos to pick out all those little things that when I look at them, they don't jump out at me. I'm glad you're there to point them out because they're very important.
I think this picture, which is Woodville, if you travel through where 135 bottoms out down by the reservoir, the small reservoir, and starts coming back up over by Winter Street, this appears to me to be one of the earliest prints we have in Hopkinton. This was an old cotton mill. One of the, probably the third cotton mill in the country was constructed here. And Woodville was a major manufacturing center. That's what's where the Reservoir Hotel is today. Let me go back a little bit more here. Oops. It's been a while since I have different PowerPoints for different presentations, depending on what people ask me to speak about.
Do you have a particular favorite historical structure or building in Hopkinton?
Yeah, I do. I don't know. Let me just see if I have a photograph of it here. It'll probably be towards the end of this. Let's see. Yeah, this is it. This is, I think, just a magnificent wooden structure. This was the second Congregational Church. It's where the Korean Congregational Church is today. It's right across from the town common. The Congregational Church originally was on town common, and it was the meeting house for the town as well. And it was constructed, I believe, around 1740-ish, and was on town common until they built the first wooden structure here, Congregational Church, across the street. And that's when they separated church and state, literally, and they built a separate town hall. But this building, to me, is just beautiful. It's a remarkable piece of architecture that I wish it was still there today, because I just think it's gorgeous.
Wow, this is great, interesting stuff. I could certainly watch you do this pretty much all day.
Yeah, well, we're about to. Some folks have asked if we would do a new round of historical talks at some point in the coming year. So we're looking to prepare one on the intellectual history of Hopkinton, because there's quite a history of philosophy here.
That's really good, Chuck. That's really good. This is really nice presentation. We've got about a minute left. So
sure.
If you could stop sharing this, and we can.
Yep, I'll jump right out right now. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for showing us this.
Sure. Yeah. My pleasure. Glad to be able to jump in with everyone.
No, it worked out, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of comments from this one, and hopefully we can have you back again and organize this so that you can take us from 1775 up to 1875, and then.
Sure. Yeah, whatever you guys want, we'd be happy to pull something together.